Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. For the first time all year, we get a chance to get up here and talk about a South Carolina offense that was a pleasant experience to watch on Saturday afternoon. And I think the most obvious conversation we need to get into is, could Mike Furrey potentially be the answer for South Carolina as the offensive coordinator, as the play caller going into 2026? Now, I'll put my hand up right off the bat and say I really liked what we saw from Mike Furrey's offense on Saturday against Coastal, and quite frankly, like some of the things that we saw from South Carolina's offense in the first half against Texas A&M. At the same time, I'm not sure if I'm sold on Mike Furrey being the answer in 2026. We'll get into the reasons why, but I think it's most notably there's not a ton of experience in sample size for Mike Furrey as a play caller at this level of the sport. Shane Beamer's tenure, it hinges on the offensive coordinator hire. Like, look, you get offensive coordinator right and you get offensive line coach right and you fix some of those problems going into 2026. This team has a chance to win a lot of football games. Shane Beamer has a chance to not only save his job, but get this program back where it needs to be going. On the flip side, Shane Beamer doesn't get this one right, and I think the Shane Beamer era is over before we get into 2027. Is Mike Furrey the guy that we want to hitch the Shane Beamer, the Shane Beamer tenure to? That's the conversation we'll get into, but I want to start with this. What did we see from this offense that we like? Because there's a laundry list of things that I saw that really had me fired up. We also got a new offensive coordinator candidate to talk about as well. Busy offseason coming up, and this is what I'll say to the South Carolina fans. Number one, y'all know how much I appreciate you guys. This was a team that we talked about a ton in the summer heading into 2025. It was no secret that I was confident that this team was going to win some football games. And although it did not go the way I think a lot of us planned, it's going to be a really fun team to talk about over the next couple of months. And what I mean by that is that we got an offensive coordinator hire to make. We got an offensive line coach hire to make, and we got some personnel aspects about this team that need to get figured out. It's going to be a busy next couple of weeks and months. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And without further ado, let's get into it. Now, let's start with this. What we liked about the offense. I want to start with this, and sometimes the sport, man, ain't that complicated. We can talk about X's and O's and scheming. We'll talk about some of the things that we saw that I liked. Starts with getting your best football players on the football field. And one of the things that I noticed right off the bat is what the running back rotation's been. No, I was South Carolina starting and using the wrong running backs in the first half of the season. It certainly looks that way. You go out and spend a lot of money on Rasul Faison in the portal. You have a veteran and Oscar Attaway coming back, and those were the two running backs that South Carolina primarily went with to start 2025. From what we have seen in the 2025 year, those are not the two best running backs on this roster. You look at Howell and you look at Matt Fuller and the way they've both run the rock the past couple of weeks and say, hey, we were just not playing our best players in the first half of 2025. Sometimes it ain't about scheming X's and O's. Sometimes about getting the right players on the football field. That is probably where it starts, right? The run game and the way these running backs are running, giving South Carolina some juice. Number two, creativity in your concepts and your formations. I think this lent itself to LaNorris Sellers being a little bit more of a difference maker. You can tell Mike Furrey is taking the approach of, hey, we have a quarterback in LaNorris Sellers that is such a stress on an opposing defense with what he can do, not only throwing the football, but being an athlete. And if we fully maximize and lean into all the ways LaNorris Sellers can test the defense, that's the best version of South Carolina's offense. That's what you've seen from South Carolina specifically in that game against Coastal Carolina. 45% of dropbacks came off of play action, so we're utilizing play action more. Here's the last thing. Yards after the catch. And the yards after the catch stat is primarily based on, hey, how much space can you create on the football field? The more space you create for your players with the football, the better you're going to be in the yards after the catch department. And you look across the board at all the best offenses across the country, they all are really, really good in the yards after the catch category because they know how to get their best football players the football in space. Against Coastal Carolina, and this was a very similar story against Texas A&M in the first half. LaNorris Sellers, I should say this, the South Carolina offense, 315 passing yards. 285 of them against Coastal Carolina came after the catch. Like, we understand that there are some limitations with the South Carolina team, specifically on the offensive line, specifically in pass protection, right? It does not take a rocket scientist to understand we are not good enough protecting the passer in 2025. Well, how can you work around that? Get the ball out quick to your players in space. Don't make LaNorris Sellers sit in the pocket for 3 to 4 seconds. That's what you saw. Hey, let's work to the quick game. We got guys on the outside that can make people miss and can be electric in space. Don't have LaNorris Sellers sit behind an offensive line that can't really pass protect. Work around your deficiencies. Lean into the strengths of this offense from a personnel standpoint. That's what you saw Mike Furrey do. I don't think it was groundbreaking stuff that you saw from Mike Furrey, but it was centered around who are our best football players? How do we get them involved in optimal ways? What do we not do well as an offense? And how can we avoid what we don't do well? And as a result, you saw a South Carolina offense that was exciting. You saw some different formations. You saw some different personnel groupings. You were leaning into your best players. And normally when you do that, when you say, hey, find our best players and get them the football, feed your studs, normally things are going to work out. And here's the thing with the South Carolina offense, you got studs. And it starts with LaNorris Sellers. Obviously, Nick Harbor's working through an injury, but you have Nick Harbor too. Jaden Sellers. When he has the football in his hands, it feels a little bit different. I liked what we saw from Mike Furrey. Now, here are the concerns, and the most notably concern is that there's not a ton of play calling experience at this level, and the conversation is, well, it's kind of and I'll say this, I didn't know we were going to see this different of an offense, but that's kind of what we've seen. Are we catching some of these teams off guard? Shane Beamer has to make that decision. I understand the optics of it, right? The optics of you made an internal hire to replace Loggins last year with Mike Shula. We all thought it made sense at the time. It clearly was a really bad hire. Are you really going to promote from within once again? I don't know if that's necessarily the best idea. And I certainly have seen the South Carolina fans on the message boards not necessarily be the biggest fans. And quite frankly, I am probably not either. That doesn't mean Mike Furrey shouldn't be on the staff next year. Mike Furrey should definitely continue what he's doing with the wide receivers, right? What he's doing recruiting, what he's doing developing. It is very clear he's doing his job at a very high level. Maybe you strap on the passing game coordinator, co-OC tag, because I think he's quite frankly earned it with what he's done with the wide receivers, what he's done as a play caller in the back half of 2025. And I think the last conversation is, all right, let's see what it looks like against Clemson. And if it does look right against Clemson, maybe this conversation gets a little bit more real. I still believe that there are some other things you have to figure out about this football team going into 2026 before you want to make your offensive coordinator hire. Yeah, like it starts with the future of LaNorris Sellers. It's kind of the chicken and the egg situation. I think you have to figure out the future of LaNorris Sellers before you go hire your offensive coordinator. Now, what I mean by that is the coordinator hire that you're going to make it. If LaNorris Sellers is going to be back in 2026, you want to have an offensive coordinator hire that can build an offense around LaNorris Sellers and maximize this kid as a football player. If LaNorris Sellers is going to be leaving South Carolina, whether that's to the NFL draft, whether that's to the transfer portal, maybe you're looking for an offensive coordinator that can come in, maybe bring a quarterback, or let the coordinator choose a quarterback to bring in from the portal. I think it's pretty clear that, look, if LaNorris Sellers is not back in 2026, we have to get a quarterback in the portal. And it's not an anti-Cutter Woods. It's not an anti-Air Nolan. We just have not seen enough from either of them to say, yeah, that those are the guys that are going to win us a lot of games in 2026. Figure out what the future is of LaNorris Sellers. then you can make your offensive coordinator hire. Now, another name that's getting some buzz that is not my first choice, but it's worth talking about, John David Baker at ECU. Doing a really good job, and he checks a lot of the boxes that you look for. Number one, worked for Lane Kiffin. To me, that's a massive asset, right? Lane Kiffin's one of, if not the best in the game at calling and designing an offense. And I get to hire a young offensive coordinator that has experience working under Lane Kiffin. That is certainly a plus, right? What he's doing at East Carolina, really good. It's a balanced offense. He's done a really good job with Caden Hauser at quarterback. And I'll say this, if this gets a little bit more real, I'll go into the ECU film a little bit and have some stronger takes about this offense. But when you look at it from a surface level approach, balanced offense, good job developing quarterbacks, running the football decently, keeping the quarterback clean. That's another thing. I think they've done a nice job with their offensive line. There are some things you like. The concern that a lot of South Carolina fans have is how many offensive coordinators are itching to come to South Carolina. And why that is Shane Beamer's on the hot seat going into 2026. That's a little bit of a concern. If you're an offensive coordinator that's going to leave your job to go to South Carolina, the concern is Shane Beamer might not be here in 2027, which means I got to be looking for a new job in 2027. I think retaining LaNorris Sellers could be a big storyline here. What I mean by that is that is such an easy sell to offensive coordinators. If you want to go out and hire an offensive coordinator and your selling point is, hey, you get an offseason to work with LaNorris Sellers and build an offense around this kid, there are going to be a lot of offensive coordinators that I think would take you up on that. And they know the risks. Like, you don't get it right and you come to South Carolina and it doesn't work, you're probably looking for a job in 2027. There's a lot of these guys that just believe in their ability. You get an offensive coordinator that thinks they can have a lot of success with LaNorris Sellers. Again, I guess what I'll say is that this can turn around quickly if you make the right decisions. What I'll keep saying, though, is that the offensive coordinator hires a big deal. Do not forget about the offensive line coach hire and what we're going to do fixing this offensive line, because you could have Coach Sark or Lane Kiffin calling the plays next year. If you don't fix this offensive line, it's hard. It's hard to have a good offense in the SEC. Can you get an offensive coordinator that can maybe bring in an offensive line coach that gives us confidence this can get fixed? It's been the Achilles heel of Shane Beamer his whole tenure, right? Like, there's been a lot of positives with Shane Beamer at South Carolina. Never really gotten the offensive line right. That's held this team back. Can you get it right in 2026? And that is getting the right coach, getting the right players to come in through the portal. If you do that, let's just set the stage here and say, all right, LaNorris Sellers is going to stay with South Carolina for one more year, of which it sounds like there's some positive buzz in that direction. If LaNorris Sellers stays, you get the offensive line figured out. And I'm not saying it has to be elite, but it just can't be a liability like it's been in the past. And you get the offensive coordinator hire, right? This team could win, because I really do like what you have on the defensive side of the football in terms of coaching staff, but also young talent. We'll close it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Mike Furrey, I let it fly in the comment section. Would love to hear y'all's take. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.